Okay, Kathy, this is the 5th episode in the series Hope for Hurting Wives. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so you started this chapter off, which is chapter 4, with a short prayer. Oh Lord, help me better understand my husband's struggle. And honestly, I kind of wondered how many wives even really care to better understand the struggle that their husbands are having. But I think that your heart is that if a wife can get a different perspective of why her husband is so obsessed with sexual pleasure, it may make her realize that this is not as personal as she has been making it out to be in her own mind.
Yeah. It's hard not to take it personal. It just is, because I'll just refer to my own testimony. When it all came out, now this is back in the early 80s, there was no digital media. It was all paper or videos. So Steve basically announced what he was doing and put a stack of XXX rated magazines in front of me and showed me what he was looking at. My immediate response was total damage control, and how do I be that? Because, well, for one thing, I was 20 years old, and I wanted him to want me. What woman doesn't want that? That's what women want. They want their husbands to want them exclusively. It is part of us. So I'm going to share a little conversation that Steve and I had together, and it was a catalyst for me. This was after a couple of years of horrible, horrible sexual sin. I mean, it was bad. It was very, very bad. And we were trying to stay together, work things out, but he was just so obsessed. Man, he was so obsessed. And one day he sat down with me and he said, Kathy, I am in love with you, and you are who I want to spend the rest of my life with. Sex with other people is different. It doesn't have anything to do with you. It's about having sex regularly with other people. In my young mind, that didn't make any sense, but I got the drift of what he was saying to me. Because in a man's mind, they can separate. I did not understand this. I still don't understand it, but it's words and they go into my brain. They can separate sex from love. A woman can't do that, usually, typically. Women associate intimacy, sexual intimacy, with love. And they are doing that with the person that they love. A man doesn't have to have love to have sex. He just has sex. So that conversation helped me to understand better, but I had to go back, and Steve talks about this in that chapter in my book. He goes into all the details about what it's like for a young man, a young boy, a 12-year-old coming into puberty, and the raging hormones that ensue, and just these feelings. And he talks about it in pretty good detail, what it's like. It's, contrasted with a young girl who's going into puberty. Her experience is completely different. It's not sexual like it is for a boy. It's different. You're angry and you're raging at the world. You want to kill everybody. That's rebellion usually tends to kick in for young girls, or, it's just different. But for a young man, those feelings are powerful, so powerful. And it starts at a young age. And once a young boy experiences self-gratification, game over, in a sense. I mean, they are on their way. And trying to stop that is like trying to stop a freight train. So that's where it starts. And I'm just thinking about what it's like for young boys now who have digital they have iPhones in their pockets. They carry pornography around with them. They are surrounded by a culture. It's saturated with pornography. You cannot go anywhere and not be affected by it. So you've got these hormones, you've got this accessibility, you've got self-gratification, and I think women do not understand the power of that drive in a man. It's just, they don't get it. And their attitude, okay, so now you scroll forward to a marriage, and he came into the marriage almost pretty darn sure he brought this into the marriage with him. At least now, a 20-year-old man that's getting married has been exposed to pornography probably for years. And he brings this into his marriage. And he's thinking that marriage is going to correct it. And even if she knew that he was involved with pornography, she thinks marriage is going to correct it. And it's not like that. It is not like that. And the disappointment, so that's where everything just kind of goes left. And she's now in a marriage with a guy who's still obsessed. And so her feelings are, what's wrong with me? What do I have to do to make this guy love me? Because she's still thinking it's love. That love is that he doesn't love me, and that's not usually the case. I wouldn't say he's loving you like he should, for sure, but he is obsessed with sex, and usually any way he can get it. But it has nothing to do with her. I hope this doesn't blow anybody's mind too much here in the pure life realm, but I had a perfect body when I was 18 years old when I met Steve. And yeah, it didn't matter. It didn't matter that I was an 18-year-old. It didn't matter that I had a perfect body and that I was cute and blah, 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 all that stuff. This one lady I just recently talked to, I just could not believe she said this to me. She's 50 years old, and she said, I was so hot when we met. And I'm like, really? You just said that out loud. That's not enough for a guy addicted to pornography. You don't understand the power of it, and that you're not the problem. You can be as hot as fire, but women, a lot of men, take advantage of that weakness and insecurity in the wife, and they say, if you were this and if you were that. Steve did that to me. He definitely exploited me. He exploited my insecurity. And so it led me down a path of trying to win him. And you're not the problem. I don't care what your body looks like. You're not the problem.
Yeah. You referenced that it was actually your husband who wrote this chapter. And the reason that he did that was because he was the one who was so horribly addicted to pornography. And so he wanted to explain from a man's perspective what kinds of things are contributing to the addiction, right? And yeah, I don't know what it would be like for a wife exactly to hear that there's literally nothing she could have done or been that would have had any kind of effect on her husband's addiction. But I mean, maybe it'll relieve some of the torment.
Yeah, it's not her.
Yeah.
I did everything for Steve. I tried to become one of his porn stars. I'm sorry, and that might be gross. It is gross. It was gross. I tried to do that. There was nothing wrong with me physically. It didn't matter because it had nothing to do with me. It was his heart. He was the one obsessed. And there's no amount of sex or anything else that a wife can do that's going to change that. It's his heart.
Yeah.
He has to change his heart, not you. You can't do that.
Yeah, and what I thought was just so convincing. I hope women will buy this book and read this, especially in this chapter. I mean, Pastor Steve just laid out such a convincing very logical,
Yeah, man
very
stuff.
unemotional,
Yeah.
scriptural explanation of how a young kid can become essentially just completely enslaved to sexual pleasure. And what he talked about was three influences that when they work together can take, an 8-year-old kid or a 12-year-old kid and basically turn him into an uninhibited, unrestrained sex addict. Number one, the influence of his own fallen nature. Influence number two is the world, and influence number three is the devil. And I think I'd like for you to maybe talk about these from your own perspective. And I'm just hoping that this will really help a wife. So first, let's talk about a man's fallen nature. Like, how does that influence work in a man's life?
Well, in the fallen nature, there's no restraint. There is no restraint. There is just whatever my flesh wants, especially for a kid, a young boy. So, you have your mom and dad here in the background yakking about don't do this and don't do that. But what's going on in you is powerful. It's very, very strong. And it's going to take more than just a nagging mom and dad to help you with that. And, I know a family who have a young man in there. He's at that age and stuff is happening with him, but he's been raised in a godly home and there's enough tension between the spiritual life and the carnal life to help him because they've raised him in the right way, not guilted him or any of that. They have really helped him to understand the long-term consequences of life in the flesh. And it's helping him, and he's getting through. But most kids don't have that balance of understanding. You've heard, how many of us have heard, he's just sowing his wild oats. That is a very evil, acceptance almost of the destruction that happens in men. Allowing, this, it sounds kind of cute to hear this young boy is just
just doing what boys do.
Yeah, that's true. But where is that going to put him at when he's 25 years old and trying to raise children and have a wife and all of that? And you see, we live in the fallout at Pure Life Ministries. We are surrounded by devastated families. So, yeah, the flesh is powerful, and unrestrained flesh is a freight train.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder how hard it is maybe for a woman to realize that the kinds of powerful impulses that are in her are, in a sense, it's no different.
Right.
Her absolutely driving compulsion to be whatever it is, accepted, loved,
Right.
is the same kind of thing. It's just in a different direction. Like, boys aren't thinking that way a lot of times. They're just thinking, I just want,
Sex.
sexual pleasure.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and girls are obsessed in a different way, but kind of the same. I'm thinking about back in the day when I was young, and they are obsessed with how they look. And when you think about what boys are doing and what girls are doing, a girl's obsession, wanting to be accepted by her peers, but also by boys when she gets to a certain age, is like, okay, all of a sudden there's guys. You understand there's boys. And so you want to look a certain way, you want to attract. We just are very motivated by acceptance. We want to be accepted. We want to be loved. And we'll pay almost any price to get that love. And for a lot of girls, the price is sex.
And the guys, guys are basically the same way. They'll pay any price, but the price is often just an unchecked pursuit of pornography or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and they, the other thing that goes along with their unchecked desire for sex is how they victimize girls. And Steve's testimony, I don't think he wrote this in my book, but we've talked about it a lot in the past. What he did to girls, he would seduce them. He knew how to say the right things at the right time to get what he wanted, and he almost always did, because he knew this innate thing in a woman to be loved and be accepted by a man. And so he would say those things, and he'd get what he wanted and dump her. And that happens. That is constant. That's a constant daily life for a lot of people. So girls, because they're not thinking in terms of controlling that, they think it's normal, it's natural, and I want to satisfy that. So again, the price is sex. But then you're diminishing, and you are like eroding yourself spiritually as a person. You're just downgrading. I did that. I did that with Steve. We were in sin before we got married, and it just does something to you to give yourself away. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like just this total self-disrespect to be that needy for the acceptance of a man. There's something wrong in that. You're more than that.
Yeah, so you've got this dynamic with men who, for years before they ever met their wife, they've got this driving compulsion and obsession with, I want sexual pleasure, whether that's self-gratification or pornography or looking at women or flirting with girls, whatever it is. And then you've got the second influence, which is that they live in this world.
Yeah.
Talk about how that influences a young man.
Yeah, the culture. This culture is absolutely saturated with sex. We don't have television in our home, so I don't know what's going on TV, but I can look at the culture and I can see, what's happening to people, and just the obsession with sexual things. Everything is sexualized. Everything is sexualized, and people are. Yeah, it's like their whole world is framed by sex. I mean, you stop and think about that. It's like so out of norm. That's not normal to be so obsessed with anything, really. We were talking about young people before, and if you go into, and I don't recommend that you do, but if you go into Ulta, it's a shop where you can buy makeup, or Sephora or whatever. The whole atmosphere in those places is me. Beautiful, sexy me. That's what it is. You may not, anybody that's listening to me may not feel that way or think that way or see it that way, but I see it that way. It's all about me. And it's a very selfish, sexualized atmosphere, because the goal is to be beautiful, to be more than who you are, as though you're not enough. You've got to do more to attract more. And it is not just girls trying to attract boys. Girls are they're so competitive with each other. And so there's this atmosphere. Well, that atmosphere, men see that. Men see the obsession that girls have with their bodies, the way they dress, the way they fix their hair, the way they fix their makeup. It's all like a stage. And girls are way willing to be portrayed as a sex object, because that's how we get attention. That's the culture. I mean, that's a huge part of the culture. The car they drive, the shoes they wear, everything is geared towards getting attention. And so the guys are getting their faces filled with it. And you walk into a grocery store, it's everywhere. Everywhere you go. The message is be sexy, be beautiful, and make sure you get everything you want in this life.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to, let's put aside the fact that this guy, just as a natural course of growing up, he's already got these raging hormones.
Yeah.
I mean, that's enough, right? That's hard enough, the fact that it's just
It's there.
bubbling up inside of him, he would have to have zero life to not be tempted by external things. He cannot go to school. He cannot go to the mall. He can't go to a grocery store. He can't go out in public.
Yeah.
He can't have a smartphone. He can't have internet. He can't have magazines. To avoid sexual temptation in this culture means you can do nothing.
Yeah. Isolate yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think maybe if a wife could see that, I mean, maybe it would help a little bit.
How hard it is for a man to go out into, it's like,
to have a life.
Yeah, to have a life, to go to your workplace, to drive down the road, to go to the grocery, to do anything. A man has to face women who are more than willing to show it all off, to get a few little clicks and likes. I mean, that's what it is. And I get on YouTube mostly for gardening stuff, chicken stuff, and like listening to sermons and stuff like that. But there's always something over on the side in the feed. Yeah, I can't even think of anything specifically right now, but I'm like, what in the world is that for? Who cares about that? A lot of people care about that. And what I'm referring to is like sensualized offers. So if a guy is on YouTube and he's looking at sports, what's going to come up in the feed. Sports Illustrated is going to be there front and center. You think he's going to be able to resist that? Because I'm just saying, I'm not trying to justify it. I'm just trying to say everywhere he goes, sometimes in his own home, he's being bombarded with temptation, and it's powerful. It is so powerful. So what Deary and I did, Deary did this. Deary is Pastor Steve. We are the Dearys. This happened way back in the 80s. He decided that he would never go to a mall again. He made that decision. That was on him. I did not force that. I didn't ask for that. He's the one who put into place the restraints, because he knew what was in him, and he knew what was out there, and he knew he can't resist. So his desire and his attempts to resist were just avoid. And he's done that his whole life. He has avoided that stuff. And it's built up in him a repulsion. So if there's like once a year, we have to go to Lens Crafters, which is inside of the mall. We do the shortest possible route through. We both feel that way. I don't want to be exposed to the atmosphere that's in there. So we go through and we do the shortest path to the Lens Crafter shop and go do our business and get out. But he's trying to avoid the temptations that are lurking around every corner. You cannot get away from it. He rarely ever goes anywhere without me, unless it's to campus, which is just 5 minutes down the road. But he's built in a resistance for himself. He has resisted the desire that's in him and the temptation that's pulling on him to go and look. But all these years, for 40 years, he has said no to that, and he has purposefully avoided. So, we've shared that story with people, and I know that there are guys out there that have done that, and that it is a definite deterrent. It helps, but there are some guys that will do it for a little while, and they get tired of not being able to get what they want. They wear out. It's like, I gotta have it. It's powerful. It is so powerful. So I'm just Ladies, what I'm saying to you is just take a step back and try to think about how hard it must be. And to say to a man who's been baptized into filth, probably his whole life, to just quit doing that. That's not going to work. And to get angry and to throw your barbs at him, that's not going to work either. I'm not saying just accept a man who's giving over to lust, but anger and wrath and bitterness is not the answer either. We have to learn how to pray, ladies. That is the bottom line. We have got to learn how to really pray. Your prayer life is doing something in you that's going to affect him. And it's important that we get a hold of that and not just have this attitude, just stop doing it. It's bigger than that.
Yeah, and I mean, that leads right into the third influence, which is the fact that this is a spiritual war that we're in. It's not just hormonal and it's not just circumstantial. There's also a spiritual enemy who is at every opportunity trying to use the fact that the man is already inclined this way and he lives in a culture that's saturated with sex to just create those almost unbreakable spiritual chains. That's what he's after.
There's hooks. We call them hooks. The devil gets a hook, and he gets it pretty young, and these young guys, he gets it into them very young and convinces them through the whole process, this is normal. But it's not normal. This is not how God created us. He did not create us to be so obsessed with illicit sexual perversion. I'm going to read this because it'll sound better if I read it than if I just try to wing it. Whether people want to admit it or not, there is an unseen realm all around us. Spiritual enemies and darkness surrounds us and are ready to hook young people. The whole realm of sexuality in the culture was spawned in hell. Like everything else that God created as good, the devil has counterfeited, and you end up with a world of men addicted and women who end up blaming God for broken lives and broken marriages. And this is exactly what the devil, this is how he is. This is what he does. He takes something good that God intended it to be good and perverts it and ruins people. You think the devil isn't just laughing and scoffing and having a heyday in the lives of people? And what gets me so angry, especially counseling women, the devil traps these men by their own what's naturally occurring in their body. He traps them, not just physically, spiritually. They are bound to their sin. It reminds me of the ring, with Gollum, and that's what it reminds me of. Just cannot live without this stinking ring. I have to have this ring. But in the process, ruins the lives of his wife and his children. But then the wife, in her response, because a lot of times it's the wrong response, she gets enslaved. I deal with people all the time that are enslaved, men and women. He's enslaved to lust, she's enslaved to anger or bitterness or wrath or self-pity or all of it. And that is exactly what the devil is after. He's winning. If you don't stop the war in your own heart, the lies that are in you, he's got this. He's got you. And this is a very real thing. It's not fake. It's not fake news.
Yeah. You just brought out another way in which this is not about her either.
No.
This is about something far more encompassing than just, if I could have looked better, or if I could have done this differently, things would have been okay. There is like a very malevolent being behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
This is not about her at all.
Not her at all, but she becomes front and center. And her responses and her anger and her confusion and her bitterness and her this and her that. That's exactly what the devil wants. That's why I am always harping on praying. Pray. Just get off of the living with fear. Stop living with fear. Stop allowing the enemy to control your emotions, and learn how to pray in the Spirit. Learn how to get into your word. Read the word of God. Believe it. Embrace it. Love it. Eat it. There is no other hope. I don't know how else to say it. If you want to go to a psychologist and have him walk you off the ledge once a week, you can do that. But I'm telling you, the way to go through is through on your knees, broken spirit, not like, when I say brokenness, I'm not talking about just being an absolute dripping mess of whatever that term conjures up in people's mind. When I say broken, I mean broken before the Lord, crying out, appealing to the God of mercy, appealing to Him for Him to fill you with His Spirit, to break you out of your fleshly mindsets through prayer and through being in the Word of God. I'm telling you, ladies, that is the way out. There is no other way. You cannot fight this devil in the flesh. He's going to win every time. So there you have it, and my struggle, my heart is to get these women angry enough at the devil that they will really start fighting, spiritual fighting in prayer, be out of love, not out of anger towards their husband, but out of love for him. I was thinking about this. If women really understood what was at stake, what their husbands are going to end up in, if something doesn't change, where's this leading? Where's the compassion? We're so hurt. We're so devastated. We're so broken for ourselves. But we're missing what's really going on. He's being taken. He's being taken. And that's real to me. I'm surrounded by men who were being taken. And somebody has been praying for those guys or they wouldn't be here. And I just want to admonish women, man, you've got to change your whole outlook. Something has to change for you. And take up the authority that God has invested in you to pray. He hears us when we pray. Heartbroken prayers, crying out for that one. And it will drain you. It will absolutely drain you, but keep fighting. Just keep fighting.
Okay. I can't think of any other place where we should stop. So thank you for coming in.
It's my pleasure.